Can a sweetener literally shrink belly fat while having no effect on blood sugar or insulin levels and doesn't cause tooth decay? Is that possible? It would literally be the best sweetener, and it works better than sucralose. So what are we talking about? This natural sweetener is called allulose. Allulose is a rare sugar that naturally occurs in fruits like figs and raisins. It's about 70% as sweet as sugar, therefore a little less sweet than normal sugar. Basic sugar, called sucrose, is the most well-known form of sweetener, but there are many other types of sugar that are in or added to foods. There are simple sugars called monosaccharides, which contain a single sugar molecule. These include glucose, fructose, galactose, ribose, and xylose. And then, there are disaccharides, which are two sugar molecules bonded together like sucrose, lactose, and maltose. Allulose is a monosaccharide that has 90% fewer calories than sucrose, which makes it virtually calorie-free. What's interesting is that it's not metabolized by the body. It's absorbed by the small intestine, but then actually excreted. So none of the calories get absorbed or stored in your body. With the limited research that's been done, it's been found that allulose doesn't have effects on blood sugars or on insulin response. This might literally be the only sweetener that has a positive metabolic impact on reducing belly fat and fat loss in general. A study published in Nutrients took 121 humans and compared them with a placebo group. The comparison was a sucralose like Splenda versus allulose. The allulose group was subdivided into a low allulose group, that was 4 grams twice per day, and a high allulose group which was deemed 7 grams twice per day. They gave them this dose for 12 weeks, and what they found in the 12-week study was that the allulose group had a significant weight reduction in body fat percentage and body fat mass over the sucralose group. They were eating the same amount of calories, but the allulose group contributed to better fat loss reduction, body fat percentage, and it reduced the subcutaneous fat in the midsection of the abdominal region. The overall BMI was reduced too. In order to understand what's going on, we need to look at some of the mechanisms involved. In rodent model and human model research, the allulose groups were superior when it came down to fat oxidation, or at least fat loss versus sucralose. But let's go ahead and take a look at the mechanisms, just so we understand what's going on. In a paper published in Molecular Food Research, subjects were given a high-fat diet to essentially try to create fat and a poor metabolic state. Now, with this high-fat diet, they either gave the subjects glucose, fructose, erythritol, or allulose, and then they measured the effects. What they found was the allulose group had the best overall outcome. They found the allulose group ended up increasing the overall amount of fat oxidation and decreased the amount of overall fat storage. Now let's jump to fatty liver. What is really interesting is that a paper was published in Molecular Nutrition and Food Research regarding mechanisms involved with a mouse model study. In this case, they gave mice a normal diet, a high-fat diet, and a high-fat diet plus allulose. What they found is that the allulose group ended up minimizing the weight gain that was associated with a high-fat diet. So they put mice on a high-fat diet to get them to gain weight, yet when allulose was introduced, it attenuated some of the weight gain. This is very promising. What was found overall was that excessive lipid accumulation was attenuated in a high-fat diet. The surplus is excess lipids, which are stored easier, so that was attenuated. Not to mention, once again, some of the receptor proteins, in this case PPRY, were actually turned down, so the liver didn't store as much in the way of fats. What if you overindulged in something that you shouldn't have? You cheated on your diet big time. Then you can consume some allulose in like 2.5 gram, 5 gram, 7.5 gram, or 10 gram servings to offset the sweets that you ate. This could be a good use for supplementation. In another randomized double-blind crossover study that was published in Diabetes Research and Care, researchers looked directly at this observation. It was a 30-participant study, and they had them consume glucose sugar. Then they gave them various dosages of allulose. The varying dosages were 2.5 grams, 5 grams, 7.5 grams, or 10 gram servings. And they monitored them at the 30, 60, 90, and 120-minute marks after consuming the sugar and the various doses of allulose. In a dose-dependent fashion, the allulose would attenuate the glucose response in plasma levels of glucose. After sugar consumption, the glucose, as well as insulin, was stabilized. The insulin response was attenuated as well, so it wasn't just glucose that was brought down, but insulin levels were also lowered in a dose-dependent fashion. The more allulose that was consumed, the lower the glucose and the lower the insulin response. So there you have it, with allulose, there is a substantial metabolic play here. Allulose is not an artificial sweetener. It is just considered a rare form of sugar that has a different metabolic effect on the body, and because it's a regular sugar, it binds to the GLUT2 receptors in the same way they would with glucose or fructose. Thus, in this case, you're occupying this receptor with something that is somewhat more benign than sugar or fructose. Therefore, if you had to choose between sugar, fructose, or allulose, then allulose clearly is the choice to make. It garners less of a glucose spike, it lowers fat accumulation, and lowers insulin responses. In addition, there is a GLP-1 effect as well, which is similar to the mechanistic effect that the product called Ozempic has. It's almost like it is nature's natural fat loss agent. Now there is some newer emerging evidence showing that allulose has an outrageously powerful GLP-1 effect. There's one thing that we have to understand, and that is allulose is in relatively low supply, and there is a high demand for it. Therefore, the purchasing price is a little higher. Allulose is found naturally only in small amounts, and takes some processing, which makes the price point higher than other sweeteners. Allulose isn't currently being widely distributed, so you're not going to be seeing it on counters at your local coffee shop or in packaged foods, at least not yet. It doesn't make financial sense at the time for companies to include it, but if you are a health-conscious individual, this natural sweetener is the way to go. What are the downsides of allulose? Well, consuming large quantities may cause stomach discomfort, including gassiness, bloating, and queasiness. But that is the same side effects that are being seen in any other artificial sweeteners used in large quantities. Large quantities of anything can and will be a problem. So, as in everything in life, restraint is a requirement. This video has been brought to you by wiseonionnutrition.com. If you liked this video, please press like and subscribe and stay tuned for more informational videos. Thank you.